I welcome President Putin's interest in building a Russia that enjoys the enduring strength of a stable democracy.
I looked the man in the eye. I found him to be very straightforward and trustworthy. I was able to get a sense of his soul.
Mr. Putin and I have strong disagreements on a whole range of issues, but I can talk to him. We have worked together on important issues.
Russian leader Vladimir Putin has eluded American presidents for nearly 2 decades now. Each of those 3 men sought to work with him, only to be rebuffed, outfoxed, stonewalled, and misled by the former KGB agent. So will Donald Trump be any different? And what is it that Vladimir Putin wants? We'll talk to the American diplomat tasked with figuring that out. But first, ABC News chief foreign correspondent Terry Moran is on the ground with a view from Moscow. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning, Martha. Well, Donald Trump's victory came as much as a surprise here in Moscow as it did in the United States. But there's no question that people here are generally very happy about it.
This week, Vladimir Putin showed off his dog to journalists. A loud but obedient Akita. But the question some American liberals are openly asking:
Trump and Putin versus U.S. intelligence agencies.
Has Putin now put a poodle in the White House?
I think it's ridiculous. I think it's just another excuse. I don't believe it.
Russians don't believe it either. Around Moscow and across this vast country, Russians are watching with amazement, and some in the Kremlin, no doubt, with delight, at the full-blown American freakout over Moscow's role in the U.S. presidential election. President Obama this week even implicating Vladimir Putin in the hack of the DNC and Clinton's campaign staff emails.
Not much happens in Russia without Vladimir Putin.
President Obama has said it's clear that Russia hacked.
Because this is the only explanation of the results, which are not so nice for him and the Lady Clinton.
Andrei Klimov is deputy chairman of the Russian Senate's Foreign Affairs Committee and close to the Kremlin.
You reject it?
Absolutely. It's American fairy tales, it's American fictions. It is a very convenient explanation because in such kind of perceptions, Russia is a threat, Kremlin is evil, all bad boys there in Kremlin, and their main task is to make some bad things for America.
Russian media, which is dominated by Putin's regime and spews propaganda, has begun to offer a different explanation for the hack. It was an inside job, a leak from Clinton's own staff or the DNC itself. And there's a sneering, mocking tone in much of the coverage here.
So there you go. That's how you prove it was the Russians.
Many Russians are skeptical of the state media here, but even seasoned independent analysts think this scandal is more American hysteria than actual fact.
Just so wild allegations, of course, we don't believe them. What happened is an American problem. We in Russia did not invent Donald Trump for you.
But one thing is very clear here. Hillary Clinton was seen by the Kremlin and by much of the public at large as a dire threat to Russia because of her perceived hawkish foreign policy and her support for anti-Putin protests in 2011.
A lot of people believe that Hillary Clinton as president probably means that there will be a nuclear war with the United States.
Still, most here, like most in the U.S., thought Clinton would win. Another argument for why Russia wouldn't have hacked her.
Russia had nothing to do with it.
For what purpose? We have no reasons to do that.
To get back at Hillary Clinton?
No.
To cause turmoil in America?
We know well who is Madame Clinton and what is her team. He hadn't any real possibilities to think about Trump like a winner.
Now that Donald Trump is the president-elect, there's a surprising sense of caution coming out of the Kremlin. There may be a case of be careful what you wish for back there, because here in Russia, as in the United States and around the world, President Trump is very much a wild card. Martha?
That's true, Terry, but it almost seems like the Russians are trying to wait out the Obama presidency, but President Obama has promised to retaliate against that hack. Aren't they concerned?
You know, you don't get the sense that the Russians are very worried about President Obama. There's a sense here that he is a pie-in-the-sky idealist. Somebody said he has too many beautiful ideas in his head. They saw him pull back in Syria, and they didn't get a strong response, according to U.S. intelligence agencies, from their initial probes into the DNC. They aren't that worried about an Obama response, it seems.
But what if there is some sort of counterattack, counter-cyber attack? How do you think they'd respond?
Well, if it's the kind of cyber attack that would turn out the lights or affect ordinary Russians, since ordinary Russians don't believe their government was involved, there'd be fury here. There'd be a great discontent. I think that President Putin, he is a cautious and savvy player. I think if the response is proportional, he'd probably find some way of ignoring it.